I often forget. So, good morning and blessings. It's such a blessing to come together, both in this space and online, because we are one. So, after the prayer, there will be some time for contemplation, and our music team will bring us back with their beautiful music. So, at this point, then, I just invite you to be here now and let us step into the beauty of prayer. I invite you to relax and celebrate this moment. Infinite presence is all there is. All there is divine mind, divine expression. I know the gifts of Source are right here, right now. In this infinite presence, there is wholeness. There is love, compassion, faith, well-being, and so much more. We are in the flow of sacred good. And knowing there is only one, I recognize I am one with the infinite universe. This is the truth for each of us, for we are one. We live and breathe in the spirit of oneness. We are each part of a greater sacred communion. And in this oneness, I affirm the following for each of us as divine sparks of creation. Wholeness is our divine birthright, our truth. It is inspiration. Divine love is declared in each breath and in community. Sacred compassion holds the highest and best possible for each of us. Faith, the knowing all is in divine order, lives on, and faith shines in the music. Well-being fuels every cell in each of our bodies, fully present. I accept all this bounty. The universe is infinite. We each play a role as the extension of the divine that we are. We come to peace within ourselves and extend that peace to others. Each of us is a candle placed on a stand, giving light to all and allowing our actions to affirm the infinite presence within. I let go and open up to sacred unfoldment, to the flow of infinite good. The words inspire, the music is joy, coming together is love. The law is always at work, and in gratitude, I release all this into the law. These seeds, these divine sparkles affirm our sacredness. And so it is. Let us contemplate for a couple of minutes.
So this whole year, we're working on the idea of being open at the top and having our dreams be greater than beyond our wildest dreams is our kind of motto that we're using. Open at the top is the idea that there's no limit, there's no ceiling on us. And so we're playing with that. And so in the first 3 months of the year, we're building a foundation based on agreements. And it's based on this book called Revolutionary Agreements. And somebody was asking me in the fellowship hall, how is this like the 4 agreements? And I said, well, there's 12 agreements, so it's 3 times better. And the person who wrote this book, the agreements they started working on the agreements in the mid-1980s in a community that she was in. And the first edition of the book came out in, I think, the late 90s or very early 2000s. And this is the second edition, by which time Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements came out. And she mentions in this that she found that it was very satisfying to find that his 4 agreements and her 12 agreements align with each other. So, you know, we're kind of on the same kind of mentality, mindset. So the first, today we're on the 3rd of the 12 agreements. We're going to be going through all 12 in the first 12 weeks of this year, so that we can kind of have this foundation to build on of how to be in life. And so the first agreement is I live my truth, or I live my truth. I live my mission is what she calls it, but it's like I live my authentic self. And part of that is finding out who is that authentic self. You know, and so it's not just that, oh yeah, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to live my authentic. It takes a little while to kind of let that unfold, right? Those who read Richard Rohr, you know, this morning he talked about that there's the little story of he walks up to a couple of fishermen and he says, follow me, and they just go with him, right? Peter and I can't remember who the other one was, Andrew I think it was. And he says, most people don't do that. You know, most of us take a little while to let's kind of, you know, evolve that slowly, you know, to learn about that. So the first agreement is I live my mission, which has, you know, inherent within it I understand and know what my mission, what my truth, what my authenticity is. And then the second agreement that we talked about last week is I speak my truth with compassion. Right? How many of us speak our truth but not always with compassion? Or you've experienced somebody else who's done that, you know, for you, right? They drive around with their big flag on the back of their pickup truck and you know, kind of, you know, let us know what they think without compassion. The third one that we're going to look at today, you ready? You're not ready for this. I agree to look within when I react. Breathe. So, at the start of this whole series, I quote Marion Head, who said, some of these agreements are obvious and easy, and others are more challenging. This is the more challenging. So she says, it's one thing to observe someone behaving or speaking negatively, or I call it behaving badly. It's another altogether to be consumed by our negative feelings about that person or behavior, to be consumed by. Anybody, not you, I know you guys never have, but you've seen people get consumed by their feelings about something else that somebody does that's going on, right? I haven't done that since yesterday. I've learned the hard way that when someone's actions cause us emotional distress, we have an opportunity for healing, specifically for healing ourselves. Ugh. We don't want to. We want to point the finger and say, no, it's them. I want to blame them or that out there, that thing out there. But there's this little thing that we know that it's all one. Right? Which means there's no them out there stuff. It's all one. There's that very old thing that when I've got my finger pointed at Sherry right here, there's 3 pointed right back at me. So I better accuse her of nice things. She's a wonderful person. Oh, you're a wonderful person too. Okay, good. And she is, by the way, a wonderful person. She says sometimes, but it's actually all the time, just sometimes she forgets that. So we have this is a very primal response, and it begins at birth, basically. It begins at leaving the safe, all of our needs are fulfilled womb for out there, right? Where all of our needs are not instantly and completely met like they were in the womb. And we experience this as, the word we can use is wounding. Wounding. Mary O'Malley, who wrote the fabulous book, What's in the Way is the Way. What's in the Way is the Way. And I highly recommend that book. I did a class on it last year, or a year and a half ago. And she says all parents give their children, she says all parents, but I'm going to say all children perceive. All parents give their children 2 core wounds, invasion and abandonment. Breathe that in. So we experience what seems like separation Thank you, HP support. Get out of my screen. I'm upset about that. I'm going to be very all-consumed by my... No, it's just a mild annoyance. We experience what seems like separation, something very different from the unitive state of the womb. And perhaps before we got to the womb. And then out of that, we build assumptions about the world, and we develop coping mechanisms to keep the pain of those assumptions away. Most of those assumptions and most of those coping behaviors and most of those ideas about it, we form by the age of 4. 3 is close enough. So, I love this book from Mary O'Malley, The What's in the Way is the Way, because she talks about a series of beliefs that keep us separate. And so, Danny, if you can bring up that slide. So we have 2 foundational beliefs. The first one is, I am separate from life. I am separate from life. Life is that out there, and then I'm over here. Okay? And then the second foundational belief is, life isn't safe, because it doesn't give me what I want, when I want it, the way I want it. All the time. Breathe. Out of that, we develop some coping mechanisms, some strategies. And the first one of those is, I must control life. Now, we laugh, but that's kind of foundational for a lot of us at our early age until we finally heal our way out of that. And the way we control life is, I must do it right. Whatever it is, I must do it right. And part of I must do it right is, guess what? Getting you to do it my way. My right way. We have, we're watching this in the world right now, yes? As frankly we have for millennia. If my religion says it's wrong to be homosexual, then you can't be homosexual. Even if you're not part of my religion and don't believe in my religion at all, I don't care. My way is the right way. Yes? You understand what I'm talking about? Okay? I must do it right. I must get you to do it right. And eventually, because we can't control this infinite thing called life, we get to the third operational belief, which is not doing it right enough. Out of that, we form 3 hidden kind of feelings and beliefs. And they are, because I'm not doing it right enough, I am wrong. Not that out there is wrong, I am wrong. And then I am unlovable because I'm wrong. And I am all alone, which is kind of our core spell. I and you are separate. It takes us right back to, I'm separate from life. And so what most people do when they hit that is they go back to, I must control life. And so we start cycling and cycling and cycling through this pattern for our whole lives. Breathe. What we're here to do is wake up. Again, in Richard Rohr's reading today, he talks about the first thing that Jesus teaches is repent. The very first thing he says is repent, which comes from a Greek word metanoia, which means to turn around or to change. And so, there's that saying of the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. If we keep cycling through this over and over again, expecting a different result, we are insane. Take a breath. So when others don't do it my way, because part of I must do it right is I must get you to do it right so that I'll experience what I want, yes? And so when others don't do it my way, I react from that primal wounded child. These agreements all sound wonderful to our intellect until our wounded child gets triggered. Yes? And then all our rationality, all our beautiful spiritual beliefs, and our high authentic values go out the door, and our fear-based values kick in. It's okay, it happens to all of us. I remember hearing a story about the Dalai Lama one time when he was doing a presentation. He got into an argument with one of his interpreters. And in front of all these people, they're having this little argument, right? And all of a sudden he stops and he starts laughing. He goes, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. If the Dalai Lama can make a mistake, if the Dalai Lama can get triggered, is it okay if you get triggered? Nudge your neighbor and say, it's okay if I get triggered or you get triggered. See, it's not that we're here to never, ever, ever react. It's not that we're here to never, ever, ever feel triggered. You know, half an hour after I wrote this talk yesterday, I was in a parking lot, and I had a parking lot experience. I got triggered. Fortunately, I had just written this talk, and I was able to catch myself, and instead of doing the angry confrontation that I wanted to do, I caught myself and say, what within me is getting triggered by that? Oh, this is my pattern of he's got to do it my way, because my way is the right way, which it was, by the way. And then my deeper belief that I'll be hurt if I'm not safe if people aren't doing it right. And so I got to use that as a place to go deeper. And guess what? Once I did that, it's just like I wasn't carrying around that experience for the rest of the day. Many of you know I used to be a hardcore cyclist, bicyclist, and if you've been on a bicycle on the road doing this, some of the long rides that I used to do, you eventually notice that there are certain people with cars that like to play chicken with you, or like to bump you, or like to, you know, I've had people literally drive from the opposite side of the road across the road at me to drive me off the road. Yeah, and I would get triggered. And one day I caught myself, and I was ticked off this guy. And I think it's kind of funny because I was riding up in Kirkland, Washington on a place called Holmes Point, as in Ernest Holmes. It's not named for him, but it's just Holmes Point, right? For those who don't know, Ernest Holmes is the kind of founder of our teaching. And this guy in a Firebird or Camaro, I can't remember which one it was, you know, came real close to several of us, just being a jerk. And I had my reaction, and then I caught myself and I said, do I want to let this guy ruin the next 2 hours of my ride? I'm out here with friends on a beautiful sunny day in a lovely place. Do I want to cling to that and keep on, you know, being mad at him, or do I want to let it go? And so I developed a little affirmation that was, even with idiots like that on the road, I'm still safe, because safety was my concern. And once I identified that underlying belief and that underlying need, it gave me a way to be with it in a different way. So it's not that we seek to not react, it's what we do about the reaction. And this is the focus of this agreement. We realize that everything we react to is an aspect of ourselves. Yikes. It's that oneness thing. Because everything out there is one, everything in here is one. There's no difference between, no separation between them. So often we're reacting to aspects of ourselves that we don't like or approve of within ourselves. Or we're reacting to unhealed memories or of past traumas that this particular person or situation has triggered within us. And it reminds us of those experiences, and the unhealed feelings explode from hiding, from wherever they've been hiding. And whenever we do this, we experience someone or something else doing this, we have an opportunity to realize that it's not really about that person or that situation. We have an opportunity to use this as a portal for self-exploration, to say, wow, how can I diffuse that? A friend of mine has a saying that says, I may have pushed your button, but I didn't install your button. And I've added, and I don't maintain your button either, which you've been doing. Okay? And it can sometimes be a callous, I'm not responsible for my actions, but it is also an opportunity for me to say, I have this button within me that got pushed. What is that button about? So I don't have to have it be pushed so hard every single time somebody does this. That I'm not doing this just knee-jerk reaction from my 4-year-old How can I diffuse that a bit? So it's not really about the person or situation, even if they have done something that's not quite my way. And it goes back to what Marian had said in that first quote that I said. It's one thing to observe somebody behaving or speaking badly. It's another altogether to be consumed by our negative feelings about that person or behavior. That's what we're trying to dissolve. That's what we're trying to pull back and away from, is being consumed by that. And so we have the opportunity to become aware of the wounding and the protective behaviors, the protective shields that we built up around that to prevent us from re-experiencing that pain again. And then the next step, once we start to discover that, is key. Marcia Wieder, in her book Dreams, says personal growth work is typically about identifying what doesn't work for and about you, fixing it, or even doing away with it. Consciousness work, which is what we do here, is about seeing, honoring, and accepting all parts of yourself. There's an ad right now of a young woman who's talking about her boyfriend having commitment issues, and the person who's listening to her. And he looks at her and he goes, "You're not a mechanic. You don't have to fix him." We're not mechanics. We don't have to fix ourselves. We're not here to say, "Oh, that part of me is bad," because that just simply separates us more from ourselves, yes? If we're judging it, if we're rejecting it, if we're trying to fix it, it's just all further rejection of myself rather than loving and embracing all of me. How many of you have wounds? Emotional, internal wounds. Yep, everybody's hand is up. Notice? Can you love yourself anyway? Do you want to be loved anyway? In fact, oftentimes where we feel the most loved is where somebody sees our wounds and loves us anyway. And so just as we might love a beloved friend who might have a couple of irritating behaviors, anybody have friends like that? Is anybody a friend like that? Okay. And we love them anyway. So trying to control ourselves to do it righter keeps us separate from love and life, which is really what we want. You know, there are two things happening in our culture that are kind of creating a perfect storm to blow this up. One is that we've learned as a culture over the last 40 or 50 years to start to accept our feelings, which is a good thing, right? Because for a long time, you know, our parents and our parents' parents and all that suppressed all that, kept it down. I'm just going to ignore that. And our feelings are powerful messengers of what's really going on for us. They can be wonderful guides for us. And it's healthy. But some people take that idea of my feelings and assume it to be reality. Well, I feel this way, so I'm going to act from that feeling. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm noticing that I'm feeling this way, let me take a step back." When the feelings are really just our subjective response to our thoughts, our beliefs, our interpretations, and past conditioning. There's a saying, feelings are not facts. They are our experiences. And so to understand that feelings have become more open to us, but also sometimes we get carried away with that and think that that's how we should run our life, is based on our feelings only. The second thing then that's happening is the media's love of stirring up those feelings, yes? Have you noticed? Okay. Feelings are powerful, though not necessarily rational motivators, so that keeping people stirred up keeps us addicted to living in a frenzied, panicked state, taking us back to, I am separate from life, life is not safe, and I must control life. I must control life by staying hyper-aware. Any of us, we all learned hyper-awareness, yes? Okay, hypervigilance. And so it triggers that off. I must stay hyper-aware. I'll call it informed, but it's like I can't go 2 minutes without listening to the news. And then being reactive and judgmental instead of asking healthy questions such as, where does this live in me also? Or what is being called for here instead of that? When we disconnect from hyperreactions and fear-based responses, we can start to hear a quieter, stiller voice, deeper voice within us that can gently guide us into living and speaking our truth with compassion and recognizing that we too don't always do it or even see it right. And when we can do this, it brings the healing power of love and of compassion to any situation. A couple weeks ago, when I was on my New Year's retreat, I was around a woman with obvious anger towards men. And she was aiming that anger at me with all sorts of little digs and comments and snarky things. And in the past, my own hurt and anger would have triggered either a reactive attack at her or just a seething silence, and I'm just going to pack up and leave and not tell anybody. But because I've become more aware of this process, both in me and others, I was able to not take it personally, recognizing that it was her stuff. I could look within for what was going on within me and honor my feelings, and I could make choices from from freedom, from a healthy place, rather than from fear, hurt, or anger. And interestingly, she later apologized and shared her pain from her past, recognizing that she was taking it out on me. And we parted peacefully. As we embody this agreement, and if we're living and speaking our truth, we'll generate reactions in others and ourselves. If you're going to speak your truth, somebody's going to be opposed to it, yes? Or be triggered by it, or react to it. Breathe. So as we go forward with a greater sense of power and peace and less fear-based need for control, as we live this agreement, so this agreement is perfect as the third of the agreements, because we're finding what our truth is, and then we're speaking our truth out. We're going to get stuff back. We're going to get blowback. Can I look within when I experience that and find out, am I reacting or am I listening to this? So as we live this way, we have less need for control, less fear-based need for control, which opens the door for much more love, which is what we really want. So this week, I invite you to do 2 spiritual practices. Number 1, as almost always, pay attention. Pay attention especially to your reactions. Notice when you're caught up in reacting. And your reactions will feel familiar because you've been doing them all your life, right? It's like, this is just the way I react. But asking, is there another way to respond? Is there something else I can do rather than letting this thing ruin my whole day? The second practice then is notice what does cause you to react and ask, what is it about this that offends me, upsets me? And where has this lived within me? Where does this live within me? Where has it maybe lived within me? Maybe I don't do this anymore, but I recognize that it still is back there in my past, and I'm still not completely at peace with the fact that I once did this sort of behavior. And then finally, am I willing to have compassion for that person or that situation and myself? Are you willing to play with those 2 practices this week? Especially in parking lots, or on the freeway, or in your primary relationships. I want to close with a quote also from Marian Head. She invites us to say this: I'll do my best to remember that it's the way I feel about my own behaviors that often triggers my disproportionate reaction to similar behaviors in others. I'll say it again. I'll do my best to remember that it's the way I feel about my own behavior that often triggers my disproportionate reaction to similar behaviors in others. It's as though that person holds up a mirror for me to see what I don't like about myself. What I choose to do about my own behavior is not my primary focus right now. My current focus is to disengage from blaming someone else for the way I feel about myself. I don't have to heal it right this moment, but I do need to step back and disengage from my normal past reactions, reactive way of being, because that will open the door to start the process of healing. And our affirmation Say this with me. I agree to look within when I react today. One more time. I agree to look within when I react today. Thank you. I know that's difficult, and I acknowledge you for being even willing to consider it. There it is.